This conference will now be recorded.
So I'll call the Village of Ashwaubenon Bicycle and Pedestrian Committee meeting to order. Roll call, please, Susie.
Sure. Leroy Volk is excused. Kyle Jago. Here. Dale Schmidt.
Here.
Jessica Atkinson is excused. And
I'm right
Clevenger, she's not excused.
She's excused, but she's here.
Well, I'm gonna leave that. And it is here, you snuck in on me, I'm sorry. Tracy Fluke.
Here.
And Linda Monson. Here. Thank you.
You can all stand for the pledge.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item 4, action on the agenda. I would ask that we make one change. Move up 9C to 9A, please.
Need a motion for that?
I would make a motion to move 9C to 9A.
No second that.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Then do we have to approve the agenda then, or is that approving it that way?
That will approve it.
Carried, okay, thank you. Action on the minutes from the Bike and Ped Committee from July 11th, 2022. I have a couple of changes. 9B in the mover, that box that is there, lists me and Kyle. Should just be Kyle. 9B. It's on the top of 5A, Susie.
I'm sorry, okay. Yep, I see that.
Okay. And then for 9C in the box again, same thing, take me off the mover. And then the nays on that should be, I believe, were Kyle and I, and Dale should have been excused, or was
I
excused.
remember checking that twice, so thank you.
Yep. And then 9E, again, Kyle being the mover. I don't know why I keep jumping in there.
I don't either, but we're gonna find out.
Okay. Anybody else have any other questions or anything on the minutes? Our last meeting. No other changes. I'd ask for a motion to approve with the changes that were made.
No motion to approve.
Second, anybody?
I'll second.
Moved and second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Item 6 is comments from the public. I just want to remind you that must be limited to just a minute. 2 items not on the agenda must state name and address, limited to 5 minutes. Board's role is to listen and not discuss the item. Personal issues cannot be discussed, nor individuals named, and board is not able to take action at this meeting.
That's your personnel.
I said personnel, sorry, yeah, not personal would be one. Personnel issues. Any comments from the public? Mark?
Hi, my name is Mark Ernst, 2430 Southbridge. Tracy asked me to come here. I'm a relatively new resident of Ashwaubenon, although I've lived in here for 300 years. Let's see. I'm a frequent user of the, I don't think it has a name, Industrial Park Trail, which is, I've noticed over the last 3 or 4 years, an increasing number of people using it, which is great. I love that. I should backtrack a little bit. I'm also on the Fox River Trail, Friends of the Fox River Trail board. And we're working on a restoration project for that venue. The trail in Ashwaubenon has really seen a lot of degradation in the last 2 years, but even in the last year, it's really gotten a lot worse. Particularly the portion south of Glory Road to its trailhead at Main Street. You may know that already. It's got some erosion problems or some culvert issues. Any place that goes near a cottonwood tree, the roots are buckling the trail up. And it's gotten to the point where if you are an inline skater, you're probably not going to be able to use it much longer at all. I quit using it for that purpose. We are seeing a lot of walkers on it, but there's also a fair amount of debris that I think cyclists kind of avoid it, even though the number of pedestrians using it are going up. I'd have a couple suggestions. One, because there are so many intersections on that trail, and people see the stop signs, but they tend to ignore them because they look like toys. One thing I was thinking that would be really helpful is a yellow, what I call a hazard stripe, across at every intersection. So people not only see the sign, they see the yellow line with the hash marks on it, stopping them, because someone's going to get beaten at one of these crossroads. During the week, particularly along Glory Road where people are traveling, fairly fast, but any of the crossroads. I'm seeing cyclists and walkers just walking out into traffic and not ignoring the signs. At some point, though, that trail is going to have to get restored, and I don't know if you've made any effort to segregate funds for that, but it's a great trail. The one other suggestion I'd make for it is give it a name. Certainly, there must be somebody in Ashwaubenon that's worthy of it, and right now, nobody knows what it is, and even if they do call it the Industrial Park Trail, they're not going to go there because it sounds bad. So, I mean, my suggestion would be give it a name, give it a catchy name that has an acronym so people can reduce it. Like the Fox River Trail, most people call the FRT, East River Trail, ERT, it goes on and on and on. That trail is right for a name just to get usage on it. The other thing I always notice is the trail connects to the Packerland Trail going up Main Street and then north again on Packerland. And the Packerland Trail is also getting a little beat up. Again, pedestrians don't mind it. Inline skaters, bicycles have to be worried about it. I know I took a fall there 2 years ago, crossing an intersection where there was a gap in the pavement and my tire dropped into it and I went down pretty hard. But again, I didn't blame anybody, but the point was, if I can do it, having ridden 100,000 miles or more in my lifetime, anybody can have that happen. The other thing about that trail, and the reason I don't use it very often, is because of all the driveways and sidewalks that it crosses. Again, I'm just kind of surprised no one's been beaten on it already, because people are coming out, they're getting out, they'll stick their nose of their car out to the street, crossing the trail, which gets a little bit scary. Again, having what I call a hazard stripe, where you have a stripe roughly 2 feet wide with hash marks at every crossing. People see those, they'll ignore the little stop signs that are placed right now. Anyway, lastly, is looking at the bike map. When I first came here, I always wanted to ride, I like to ride on the Broadway trail that goes down toward Ashwaubenon Park. It's a great road, great place. The problem is getting there, you're taking your life in your hands. I mean, I just did it the other day. I cut through 3 parking lots, I ride the sidewalk, because right now the designated routes are pretty scary. If I am going to ride on a road, I'll go up to Morris and then cut east and pick up that trail. It's not bad from that point on. Oneida Street, I don't think it's safe at any point. And at this point, I would just say, I tell people don't ever ride on it, although I do see people on it. I know I ride on the sidewalks there, even though sidewalk riding is not technically permitted. It's better than dying, because right now I would not. I saw Tracy riding on that the other day, and I was like, girl, you're going to get beamed. And it's a little scary. So if there's anything we could do, if you're ever out driving and you're going down Ridge Road and you turn left, turn right on Morris going east, and you get down there, take a look at that road as a designated route, it probably makes a lot more sense. It's definitely a lot less traffic. So, quick, because I'm running out of time, got to give that trail a name. Industrial Park Trail is counterproductive. It's just keeping people away from it. You need to still look at an endowment or some sort to get that thing resurfaced, because it's going to need it. It's really breaking down at an accelerating rate. I don't know where you're at as far as plowing it in the winter, if at all. And I would also look at trail sweeping or trail blowing to keep that trail clean, because right now at certain places there's a lot of debris on there. And again, the inline skaters are struggling with it. Walkers can deal with it, but the bikes as well. You get on some of these sticks and your tires will roll underneath. So in particular, it'd be great to walk the stretch from Glory Road to the park, to the trailhead, just to see. If you haven't seen it, it's getting pretty beat up. In fact, there's a culvert that's essentially washed out already. So that's all I have to say. You guys, anyway, Ashwaubenon has done a great job. Coming from Hobart, coming from Alloway, living here for 64 years, Ashwaubenon has done a pretty darn good job with their directions. We just need to keep up on it. I mean, the problem is there are some problems, but they're pretty identifiable, and there you guys can take care of them. Yes, ma'am.
Did you say Packerland? Did you say Packerland? Or it's a Packerland?
Packerland, the paralleling road on the west side of Packerland is probably more unsafe than riding on the road. In fact, I think the locals that ride it regularly are riding on the street on Packerland Drive rather than riding on the trail.
That is not necessarily Ashwaubenon.
I know, there's a section that is not in Ashwaubenon, but there's a section that
It's
is.
our trail though.
Yeah, right. I noticed that too. There's a gap on the map that doesn't show it. The other one that I always worry about, because I take it every time I ride south, is I cut across on Babcock to get to Shady, and then I take Shady over to Cormier, and then turning right to get back to Ridge. That section on Babcock at 172, that's a little creepy. If you're behind trucks that are going straight or any large vehicle, and the cars are turning eastbound on 172, they will not see you. You know, so my rule of thumb is I line up about 100 feet back from the intersection, and when I anticipate the light going green, I get up some speed, so I shoot through that intersection as fast as I can, just to minimize time in the intersection. Because cars, once they're making that turn, they don't stop. So that's a risky one, but that said, it's still better than the one at 172 in Packerland, which has really got me spooked. Very good. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Mark, for your
Thanks for your
comments.
input.
Appreciate
I've got to
it.
run to another meeting. President wants me.
Thank you.
Thank
Any
you,
other
guys.
comments from the public or anybody else? Thank you. Moving on. Site plan review, Kyle, Joel, Rex, anything to report from site plan review?
There really wasn't much. There were two things that came across. One, there was a building, and Aaron said it's 2350 South Oneida. They were redoing and I don't even know where it is. They were redoing the exterior as a rebuild, so he didn't think there was anything we needed to discuss, so I didn't even look into it. And then there are coachway condos going on Mike McCarthy Way and Holmgren Drive. And I asked for bike parking and indoor bike storage, and not being able to read all of the plans, Aaron said, oh, they're already on the plan, so we were good.
Yep, I have I think parking on Oneida and Mike McCarthy both, and then they do have indoor bike storage for their residents as well. Yep. Anything else, Joel or Rex? No? Great, thanks, Kyle. All right, item A, educational session. Today we have a presentation by Cole Lungy. He is the Director of Planning from Brown County. And he's just going to talk to us a bit about the bicycle and pedestrian plan the county puts together and kind of how it impacts Ashwaubenon and just kind of an overview of it.
Yeah, should have a PowerPoint via PDF. We can pop it up here.
Thanks for coming today, Cole.
Oh,
Appreciate
absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Yep.
There you go.
It's gonna be a little smaller on the screen, I think.
Yeah, it doesn't go any bigger.
It
No.
doesn't go any bigger?
No.
Okay. All right. Well, can you maximize them at least, or is it?
Start there.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll tell you what. While you're doing that, I might ask you to scroll once in a while, but okay. First of all, thank you for having me. As Tracy said, my name is Cole Runge. I'm Brown County's planning director, but I'm also a transportation planning director for our urbanized area. And I've been in that role since about 1996. And so I've been planning director now for getting close to 3 years. But I'm still working very heavily in transportation. Tracy and I have worked on projects in the past in Ashwaubenon and elsewhere. And like she said, what I'm here to do today is just kind of talk a little bit about our recently adopted county plan. So yeah, this is our first page. So basically, like most plans, we started out by taking a look at our 2016 countywide plan goals and objectives and seeing if they're still valid. We also did some public outreach and to determine if people had some suggestions for us to modify our goals. And once that was finished, we identified 6 goals for our planning effort. But then if you could scroll down a little bit here to show these 3 bullet points.
Technology, gotta love it.
Yeah. All right.
Can't we open another screen?
I know.
Well, it's not strange being a PDF, you can't pull it up.
The only thing would be if you sent it to me, Joel, and I can
Okay.
share.
Well, I'll tell you what, I think we can bubble through. Let's do the best we can. So basically, these are our specific goals up here for our planning effort. Basically, we're trying to do things like develop a low-stress bicycling and walking network, continuously expand the bike and pedestrian network throughout the area, to not just add facilities, but also connect the facilities to create a cohesive network throughout the entire area. We're trying to achieve and maintain 0 bike and pedestrian fatalities in the area. And we're trying to do things like education and other efforts like that throughout the area as well. So, but in general terms, what the plan is designed to do is 3 basic things. One is, since a lot of communities have their own bike and ped plans at this point, what we want to do is reflect the recommendations, especially for facilities, from those plans in the countywide plan. So when we started doing countywide plans back in the 1990s, most communities, in fact, I think at that point, virtually no community at that point, had its own standalone bike and ped plan. So that was kind of the plan for the whole area. But since then, every community pretty much has its own plan. So we want to make sure we can reflect the recommendations in those plans. The second thing is, we've had the opportunity to do or be a participant in the creation of most of the bike and ped plans throughout this area over time, which allows us to be able to minimize gaps and make sure things connect as best we can throughout the area. But in some cases, there are gaps. So what we do when we do every 5-year iteration of our county plan is take a look at all the individual community plans and determine if recommended or existing or facility gaps are in place. And we recommend connections between those gaps so you can create that cohesive system throughout the area. And then at this point, again, since so many communities have their own standalone bike and ped plans, we're kind of focusing on the idea of providing resources and best practices for not just the county, but each community when they do their plan updates. Next slide, please. All right. So like most bike and ped plans these days, our bicycle and pedestrian plan does focus on what we call the E's. Now, back in the 1990s, we had 4, and those were engineering, enforcement, education, and encouragement. Since then, we added a 5th, which was evaluation, which makes sense. We want to make sure what we're doing makes sense. But now we also have a 6th E, which is equity. And our plan is broken down by these 6 E's, in addition to addressing some of the things I mentioned a second ago. Okay, next slide. So what I'll do now is just kind of focus on some of the more important aspects of our plan. Again, there are quite a few recommendations in there. It's a pretty extensive document, so I want to focus on a few things. And then if you have questions or comments, I'd be happy to field those. So one of the things we emphasize in our bike and ped plans, as well as all the comprehensive plans and other area-wide plans we do for the region and communities, is the importance of development patterns and site designs for multimodal accessibility. So basically, a second ago you were talking about site design. That's a critical aspect of enabling and encouraging people to walk, bike, and use other non-motorized modes of transportation. But then in addition to site design, we focus on creating a variety of land uses and making sure we can enable those land uses to be situated close to each other so people have a variety of things they can reach by bike and on foot. So up here on the left, We're showing a variety of land uses next to each other with a lot of connectivity, and that could be streets, it could be trails, it could be sidewalks. We just want to try to maximize the number of connections, again, to make it easy and viable for people to take non-motorized trips. And we compare it to kind of a conventional, typical suburban style layout for land uses, which is your arterial street, no sidewalks, large lots, setbacks, and everything else, which makes it really hard for a lot of people to safely and easily walk and bike. For many years, we've also encouraged the development of commercial uses or compatible commercial uses within neighborhoods to provide, again, that opportunity for people to be able to walk and bike from their homes to, in this case, a dentist's office in the pier, or it could be a grocery store, it could be any number of things. But when we work with communities and when we put these plans together, we do heavily emphasize the importance of forming or situating your municipal codes to allow these types of uses to occur. And then down here is another example of site design where we encourage buildings to be put up close to the sidewalks and streets so people can easily and safely access them, versus kind of your older typical suburban style development or site design where you have a building separated from the sidewalk by a large parking lot that people have to cross. Okay. Next. All right. Something else we include in our plans is what we call a bicycle infrastructure toolkit. Basically what this is just kind of a list and a summary of the various types of bike facilities that are accepted at the federal level and the state level. It goes from everything from just a signed bike route to on-street striped bicycle lanes to something else I'll talk about in a few minutes, which is a parallel path along the street. Next. And here are a couple more examples. Something we don't see in this area very often, but is becoming more and more popular, is something called a bicycle box. And you've probably been to other cities where these exist. They're becoming more and more common on things like college campuses too, where the green area in here is where the bike lane is, and up in this area here, this is where the bicycles can come to an intersection and actually get in front of the cars waiting to enter the intersection. So they have the priority to either go straight, right, or most importantly, to go left. So they don't have to take a left turn from the bicycle lane. Now, when you have a bicycle lane, even if you don't have a bike box, the ideal thing to do in a situation like this, when you want to take a left turn, is to take the lane. But in many cases, if you don't have that specially marked area, you don't have that opportunity. So this green bicycle box area provides that opportunity for bicyclists to take that lane easily and safely to be able to make their turns. Another example over here we don't see around here much, but we see elsewhere, is a highlighted area where bicyclists and motorized vehicles may have a conflict. So to make sure those are easily seen, to minimize those conflicts. Okay. All right. Something else we've advocated for many, many years, again, not just in our bike and ped plan, but in our comprehensive plans we do in our area-wide transportation planning, are narrow arterial streets. And so basically what we're suggesting is take a look at a 4-lane street, or if you're going to do a new street, if you're thinking about a 4-lane street, before you do that, do an analysis to find out if you can, instead of that, do what we call here a 3-lane street, which is a single lane of traffic in each direction plus a center left turn lane, which often with restrained or constrained rights of way allows you then to put in on-street bicycle lanes, a terrace, and sidewalks on both sides. So we typically talk about the idea of a 3-lane street when you have an arterial corridor that has a lot of existing driveways or side streets, because a lot of people have to make left turns. So if you can go to the next slide. But along streets that don't have a lot of driveway access or side streets, we talk typically about installing what are called 2-lane boulevards, which again have the same number of lanes of traffic in each direction, just one. But instead of a center left turn lane, you have left turn bays at various points, along with bicycle lanes, sidewalks, and terraces. So it's a great way to make use of a very constrained right-of-way. And if you can go to the next slide. So people might be concerned that if you go from 4 lanes to something less than that, so if you build it initially, or if you want to do what's called a road diet and take a 4-lane street and make it a 2-lane boulevard or a 3-lane street, that you might lose capacity. You're going to have backups, you're going to have congestion. And it depends on the circumstances, but oftentimes that's not the case. And some of the things you can realize when you do a road diet or a 2-lane or a 3-lane boulevard or a 3-lane street include things like lower crash rates and frequencies, in addition to lower injury rates and frequencies, a far lower percentage of vehicles traveling over the speed limit. You have much higher pedestrian and bicyclist activity because you have fewer conflict points. You have lower vehicle speeds, and that's not just the case for people going along streets. It's also much easier to get across streets when you have a narrow arterial street like I've talked about before. One of the other things we found in studies throughout the country, and we've kind of seen that this sort of thing here as well, is that if you opt for a narrower arterial street versus a 4-lane street where you have a lot of lanes of traffic, tends to go a little bit higher speeds, typically your residential and commercial property values are increasing along near the streets. One other thing that, again, I kind of touched on a second ago is, and something that often happens, and it depends on the circumstances, but you often realize traffic capacity and efficiency increasing along a street that might go from 4 lanes to 3 or 2. And a big reason for that, well, there's a few, but one of the big reasons is if you have a 4-lane street and you don't have any center turn lane or turn bays, the inside lane of a 4-lane street often turns into kind of a de facto left turn lane anyway. So anytime anyone wants to turn into a driveway or a side street or anything like that, that entire inside lane stops. When you do a 3-lane street or a 2-lane boulevard, the left turning traffic can always exit the travel lanes to make those left turns. So traffic continues at a slower pace, but a more consistent pace, which can increase capacity. So next slide. All right. One other thing I'll talk about, or actually there's a couple more, but one of them is what we call the Side Path Suitability Index. And the gentleman a second ago kind of touched on this a little bit with a specific side path, but I'll go into it in more detail. So basically what this is, this was developed by the League of Illinois Bicyclists about 20 years ago, and we've been using this in our bicycle pedestrian plans and comprehensive plans that we do for communities since about 2005. It's a nice little tool. If you can go on to the next slide. So basically, the idea is you use this index to determine if an off-street parallel path along a street is safe, or if there are certain conditions that exist that might prompt you to instead do an on-street bike facility and say a sidewalk instead. So in assessing the suitability of a side path, there are 6 factors. These things include a number of driveway and street intersections, curb cuts at various crossings, crosswalks that exist, the level of pedestrian use, and the proximity of the paths, intersection, and driveway crossings to the parallel road. So next slide. So if you can see this up here, this is an example of when you do a scoring process using this index, it turns out this is one of the most, it's identified as the most suitable side path condition, largely because there are very few conflict points along that side path. There's only one cross street. You can kind of see that as the path approaches that side street, it kind of angles toward the parallel street. So the visibility for people approaching this street from the side street is very high. So visibility is high, very few conflicts. So this score is low, which in this case is good because the lower the score, the more suitable the path. So here in this situation, this would be most suitable. However, with the next slide, this is an example of a least suitable condition because largely of there's so many driveways, especially commercial driveways, side streets, at the intersections, which are kind of off this slide right here. The pathway is kind of set back, so when people approach on the side street, it's really hard to see around the adjacent land uses, so they pull up a little bit farther, which means they're pulling actually into the crosswalk. So the conditions here, after you go and score it, you have a very high score, which again for the side path is not good. This is least suitable, and in this situation, we probably would have been better off having something on the street versus something off the street like this. And like the gentleman said before, the funny thing is here that the one I showed you a second ago and this path right here are actually the same path. So if you want to go back to the previous slide, this is the Packerland path north of 172, and the next slide is the Packerland path south of 172. I'm sure you're very well familiar with that. So I realized that the conditions at the time necessitated this, and that's why the decision was made. But from a side path suitability index standpoint, one of those two north, well, the 172 path, one north of 172 would actually be suitable. The one south would be unsuitable. So next slide, please. So the last thing I want to talk about real quick, and this is something a little bit unfamiliar to this area, but we have talked about it to some extent, and it's called a wooner. And if you've traveled throughout the country or through Europe or maybe Canada, you might have run into a wooner, which is, and this wooner is actually in Quebec City, Quebec. Picture, I took the picture myself. And if you can go to the next slide. These other two examples here are actually in the United States. One is in Asheville, North Carolina. The other one is in Cambridge, Massachusetts. And basically what a wooner is, it's a shared space within a public right-of-way that gives equal priority to motorized and non-motorized modes. And there are design techniques you can use to create this environment, and it's actually very safe and very, pleasant to be in for everyone involved. And some of these features include things like narrow circulation spaces on the road, highly visible entrances with adjacent land uses, traffic calming devices, landscaping, various types of furnishing, and on-street parking. And these sorts of things are becoming a little bit more common throughout this area, and they're kind of self-regulated. So you might think that that kind of interaction is not safe, but if it's designed right, vehicles and pedestrians, and even to some extent bicyclists, can coexist within this area safely. Next slide, please. All right, well, that's all I have right now. So if you want to check out the full plan, you can't see that, but check our website, and you'll find the plan on our website.
And for the sake of this, obviously Cole sent this over to us Friday last week. I'll email this presentation out to the group so you have a copy of it. It was not included in the packet, and from there you should be able to put it in.
That's good.
So,
Thanks, Joe.
Sure. So any questions?
Any questions for Cole?
Go ahead. I have one comment. I was in Houston, Texas. My daughter lives there. And I rode on some great paths that run along the right away of the expressways. And they have elevated expressways along the byways there. And that was great. And we redid Highway 41. And I thought there would have been a great opportunity to put some paths along that wide right away. And that never happened. And now I read, and I may not be around to see it, the Southern Bridge. And looks like there's going to be a wide right of way. I would love to have bike paths along there.
And there will be.
It's early in the planning, but.
Yep. Yeah. So the plan for that facility, and if you're not familiar with where that is, it basically at this point, if you know where County Trunk Highway GV is, over on the east side, it's in Ledgeview, Bellevue. All right. So the design of that road on GV, in fact, I'll tell you what, can you go back a few slides to the intro slide for the Site Path Suitability Index? Right there. This is GV. So basically what you see here, this cross section with the 4 lanes, but the bicycle lane and off-street path, this is the design that we're intending to carry all the way through across the river to the west side up to Packerland in Lawrence. So when you look at this, that's a pretty good idea of what we're planning to do. So at this point, maybe you're aware of this, maybe you're not, but on the far west end between Packerland Drive in Lawrence and Lawrence Drive into Pier, and this includes the interchange that DOT will build in a couple of years at 41, that project is already underway. So it's being designed, and the intention is to include bike and pedestrian facilities along that stretch. We just received a large federal grant, or basically a grant, to help us design sections 2 and 3 east of there, which will run between Lawrence Drive and Pier, cross the Fox River, and end at Highway 57 on the east side of the river. So that design process is going to start very soon, and we hope to have that wrapped up by mid-2024. And the intention is to continue these types of facilities all the way through there as well. Now, one of the things we're facing, and it's something that you're facing and everyone else in the state is facing, is a provision in the state law, which was added to a budget bill a couple budgets ago, kind of at the 11th hour. And this provision prohibits the use of eminent domain to acquire land for bike and pedestrian ways. And that's still in the state statutes. So what we've experienced here, and we're hopefully not going to experience with this project and other ones in the future, is as long as that statute's on the books, if there's even a chance that land has to be acquired through eminent domain for any kind of a project, we've noticed that project sponsors may not even try to put some of these bike and pedestrian facilities in because they know If they do, and somebody challenges them, and they have to go through condemnation, that process, it could throw off the entire schedule or kill the project altogether. So that's become a real deterrent for people here and throughout the entire state to build bike and pedestrian facilities over the last 4 or 5 years or so. We've kind of found ways to do it in spite of that, but it's still a challenge. And I'm saying that because that's something we're facing right now with this and other projects. But just so you know, we have another biennial budget process coming up fairly soon. And, it was created through the biennial budget. And I don't know. I mean, I would encourage you, if you disagree with that statute, to contact somebody and let them know that you're
Like
concerned.
Representative Stefan?
I would leave that up to you.
Whoever your reps are, you could
I would
certainly
leave that up to you. However, again, just to let you know that is on the books, and it is a real obstacle to building bike and pedestrian facilities, again, not just here, but throughout the entire state.
So I'm not on the regular board, but there's a league of municipalities.
Yes.
So do they, like an issue like this, which is concerning for everybody, not just Ashwaubenon, Brown County, are they going after something like this through lobbying or?
I don't know.
Yes,
I don't
they
know.
do. Just to be direct, yes. So this is on their platform for lobbying. This is consistent with both League of Wisconsin Municipalities, Wisconsin Towns Association, and the Wisconsin Counties Association. Now, there are other pressing issues. It's on their platform that they meet with the representatives on, but it's on the low end of the totem pole as they're addressing other issues. But it is one that's on their effort each legislative session. It just, for whatever reason, doesn't get a lot
So at
of
least
traction.
it's in front of them anyways, because I mean, I think we're headed down a different path than what they put that in today's world.
As Cole had mentioned, this was really kind of an 11th hour ad to a budget bill to satisfy a legislator who was dealing with a very specific issue in their jurisdiction. And in order to get the budget passed, this was important to be added, and there wasn't a lot of foresight on it.
All right, thanks. Thanks, Cole, that was good. Thank you.
Anything else?
Question on road diet. Is there any kind of, or what do you look at, like ADTs or anything like that when you're deciding whether a road's eligible or not? I mean, what kind of criteria would you look at for that?
Well, typically, yeah, if we were asked to look at, say, a 4-lane street and determine if it's a candidate for a road diet, we would start by looking at things like average daily traffic. So, if a road had a relatively low average daily traffic or ADT level, that might be an indication that it would be a candidate for a road diet. We also look at surrounding land uses. We look at existing access points, not just side streets, but driveways, commercial driveways, residential driveways. And so we look at a variety of different things initially. And if it appears as if it might actually be a good candidate for a road diet, we go a little bit further and we take a little bit deeper look. But initially, we would look at some of those statistics, yeah.
Anybody else have any other questions for Cole at all?
Okay.
Thank
Well,
you
thank
very
you
much.
again for having me.
I appreciate it.
Thanks for coming.
All right, then we will go to action item 9. Let's see. We move number 6 or 9C up. Discussion and possible action to recommend a corridor study along Holmgren Way. I moved that up because I was thinking Cole was going to speak on it, but he's leaving, so I guess he's not speaking on it.
Fabulous too. And I can answer whatever questions we have on it.
Okay, I had just talked to Cole about it a few months ago, because this came up at our last Bike and Ped Committee, Jessica brought up about the southern end of Holmgren Way, one of the concerns about near the Rocker Stadium area. This came up several months ago at one of our meetings in regard to the north end, and public safety had brought it up in regard to the concern with lighting in that area. And then the engineering department worked on getting some LED lights up there and changing out, so hopefully the lighting was better. So we discussed the whole corridor a couple times in a couple different ways to see, different issues that we had mentioned. So I just asked it to be put on the agenda to talk about maybe doing a study of the corridor. I know that Cole, when I was working here many years ago, when they redid Broadway, went from a 4-lane facility. I don't know if any of you remember that 4-lane facility. And they narrowed it down to what you see today. It kind of winds through the corridor. It's got bike lanes. It's got sidewalks. And Brown County was very instrumental in helping to design that facility. Staff worked with Brown County, and then they also had a consultant engineer that worked on that at that time. So I had reached out to Cole just to see if it was something that the county could maybe look at Holmgren Way for us in the same way that they had looked at Broadway for us many years ago. And my discussion with him was that they would be interested in doing it. It's just a matter of getting it, on their schedule. My understanding, and Joel, I think you spoke to Cole a little bit more about it, that it would be no cost to the village. And when they did Broadway, it was the same thing. They did the study. There was no additional cost to the village to have it done. Just part of their planning services for anybody in Brown County. So that's why this is on here, just because we've had a lot of discussion about it. It's a heavily used corridor for right now for motorists. There's a lot of walkers on it, and there's also a lot of bicyclists on it right now. And there's more and more apartments springing up along the corridor as well. So that's kind of the main reason that it was placed on, just to see if it's something that we would like to pursue and see if we would like Brown County to put together some information or maybe do a study of the entire corridor for the village of Ashwaubenon. And Joel, I don't know if there's anything else.
I'll just add and confirm. So I'm talking with Cole. Brown County Planning serves as a metropolitan planning organization, or MPO. And so part of the MPO's role is to plan transportation-related projects throughout the county that would be considered functionally classified roadways. So they qualify for state, federal grants and funding from that standpoint. So Holmgren Way from Lombardi to Cormier is classified functionally as a urban collector. So as the MPO, they have the ability to assist communities that have those functionally classified roadways to do different planning studies. And so that's where Cole can, from a county's perspective, provide planning services free of charge to municipalities because it ties to that classification system. Ultimately, if the committee recommends moving forward, utilizing Brown County Planning to assist in a corridor study for that section, we would bring that forward to the village board, because generally when you do those planning sessions, not only are you looking at it from an engineering standpoint, but you're also engaging with the residents, the businesses, and everyone along that corridor. So there's a lot of public input in that process. And we want to make sure that the committee certainly is aware of that, but also the board, that you're going to be going out, you're going to be seeking public input on that corridor. You're going to have a number of what you'd call like a design charrette. So you're going to be producing information for the public to provide feedback on, especially if you're looking at a roadway diet. And then coupled with that, it's going to likely result in some type of expenditure should improvements be made on that corridor. It could be as simple as restriping the corridor, but it could also be as complex as improving pedestrian improvements such as sidewalks, adding striping, adding mid-block crossings, doing intersection improvements, things of that nature. So that study would ultimately produce a recommendation for what improvements can or could be made on that corridor to improve upon access and pedestrian and bicycle accommodations. So that's really what we're looking for tonight, or this afternoon from the committee, is a recommendation that could be forwarded to the board for consideration. And then from there, if it's agreeable by the board, we would then engage with Cole to prepare the study. We'd have to get on his schedule. I don't know what that would really look like at this point. It's all dependent on when the board, if it were to agree to do the study, when we make contact with Cole. But I suspect it would be something that would be completed in the mid to latter part of next year, just kind of knowing where he's at in his schedule right now with other planning projects that he has throughout the entire county.
Joel, are there pros or cons to doing that? To doing that stuff? What are the pros and cons?
I would say, from a pro standpoint, obviously you're going to be looking at what future improvements, so you can begin to plan that corridor and have a good understanding and idea of what improvements can be made. So if you were going to take a very strategic approach to making improvements for pedestrian accommodations, bicycle accommodations, this is a really solid planning effort to identify that, to identify what a budget would be, obviously, for that type of work. And so you can kind of strategically plan and map that out so you have an understanding of what improvements are going to be necessary. So I think it's a positive from that standpoint, that if it is viewed that improvements need to be made, this is a good entry-level step in that process of identifying what improvements could be done to enhance that corridor. Certainly, you have a roadway. I think from a negative standpoint, you have a roadway that has significant useful life to it. So politically, I think it could be challenging. You could have residents and businesses along that corridor that are going to say, well, hey, you have a perfectly good road. Why do you need to mess with it? You're spending money foolishly. And so it's just, you have to kind of overcome some of that, what would be that perceived negativity towards making those improvements. And so when you initiate that study, because there's so much public input into that process, there's going to be a feeling that the work is going to be done. So you just have to be prepared about having that both positive feedback and negative feedback that could potentially come from that, and be prepared to answer those questions that could come up both from a positive or negative standpoint. Obviously, this is a project that has not been identified yet within our capital improvement plan. So if improvements are recommended, they would need to be prioritized against other projects, of which we'll kind of talk about this afternoon as well, to see if this is a higher priority, right? So now we're going to have to determine which project needs to move forward, and maybe which project is paused as a result of that.
I would like to say that it's okay, I guess, to go to the county, have them do the plan, but I will not vote for even going to the county unless we as a board see the plan first before it goes to the village board, because I may not approve it at that time. I don't like the idea of the diet. I was not just on Lombardi this week turning on the home grid. There was a logging convention. I had to wait 2 lights before I could turn. That's one lane. You're gonna see backups. You're just going to see backups because that one lady was going really slow, turning into the lane, and if she had known where she was going, I may have been able to make a left turn, but I couldn't. I just can't envision, even with the boulevard, have the diet and boulevard, I can't envision a one lane, especially off of Lombardi and off of Cormier. I just can't. So I personally would probably even vote no going to the county unless we as a board, I have to see the plan first before it goes to the village board. I just thought.
Just to provide clarity, so if the committee were to recommend utilizing the county to do the plan, that would be in the action in and of itself is just prepare the plan. Right? At the end of the day, when the plan comes back with recommendations, that needs to come before the committee and then certainly to the board for acceptance. So the action today is just more or less, do you want to engage in the county to do the planning efforts, knowing that whatever recommendations come back from that plan ultimately have to be then recommended.
Can we change some of those recommendations if it comes back from the county?
I would think that obviously this committee, along with public and the input, and the board will certainly have input as well, that's going to play a pretty prominent role in determining what that final recommendation is.
So
I'm sorry.
I just can't see going to the plan and having us approve the plan and going to the board without I want to make sure it's in the minutes that it's coming to us first before it goes to the board.
Well, I think it could, Joe. I mean, the planning process itself is gonna be long. We'll probably be involved in it. As Joe said, the public's gonna be involved in it, village board will be involved in it. And then at some point, the plan would be pretty well set and would be presented. And maybe it's presented to the bicycle and pedestrian committee at the same time with village board. And we're, this committee is invited to village board for presenting the plan. But yes, we definitely would get it back at some time. But village board is
But then
ultimately.
if we present it to the village board, it looks like the whole bike and ped is approving it, and I may not approve it.
No, and
I
that's.
think we have to,
Well, whenever it's presented to the village board from a committee,
Right.
okay,
if it's a split vote, I mean, typically it can be specifically
you can
stated
split vote it
to the
ahead of
village
time.
board. Yeah, I mean, we would
Okay.
vote
We vote here first, that's all. I
here
wanna make
first of
sure.
whether to move it on. So
Okay.
say it was a 3-2 vote or a 5-2 vote, whatever it may be, or 2-5, that information would go to the village board, so they would know whether it's
Okay.
unanimous or whether there's different opinions on any, and it goes for any committee.
Okay.
Joe, I want to make sure I understand. So if we decide to do this today and we approve, or we want the Brown County to do the study, it then goes to the board to also know that we want that done, right? Then we go through the process. Okay.
It would go from here to village board, because this committee can't go into any kind of contract with
Right.
anybody. We would have the
Without
village board's approval.
Okay.
So yes, if we would approve it, we'd go to village board for them to decide. And it's, I guess, to think of it this way, in that it's no different than any study that the village would do. If we're doing the study, it doesn't mean that we're necessarily gonna do all those things that whoever, that we've hired to put that study together. It's something they're putting together to give us some ideas and
Yeah.
different ways that we can look at it. And we can decide on doing some of it, all of it, whatever. The village board will have ultimate say on it. And I would assume, Joel, it also looks at vehicular movement through this corridor as well, correct? It would be motor vehicle, bicycle, pedestrian, transit as well, and all of that would be looked at. It's not just bike, ped, and transit. It's all movement to make sure. And we have public safety coming out on this road. They come right out of the station. So they would be talked to and say, okay, what are your concerns? What do you think about all of this? So there'll be a lot of input and a lot of business on on each end of it that would be addressed as well. So it's a big study, but I think it'll give us some ideas on maybe addressing some of the concerns that have come up at this committee. And I'm sure there's other concerns that have come up along this corridor. I mean, speed along this corridor. I don't know, Brian, if I should have asked you ahead of time, but I would imagine there's quite a bit of speed along this corridor. And that's something that we could look at as well and see, how a different design could slow things down.
So to clarify, for them, they're looking at more than just dropping this to like 3 lanes or doing something like that. They would be looking at all different
Correct.
avenues to try to.
That's what a study would be. They're not coming in and saying, it may end up being something like that, but they'll look at all different aspects of it.
And it's at no cost to the village to have the study done.
Correct.
So there'd be no cost to incur till later. And then realistically, just because because it was recently done, this area, like what is the likely, so like, are there smaller changes that were going to be able to be made? Just because obviously it's going to take a lot of time and effort, it sounds like, to do this study. So I hate to make everybody do all of that if realistically if like the only thing that's going to come out of it is something that we're not going to be able to do. Like, are there things like that we've already talked about in this committee, like the striping? And I guess there's a lot more cheap, in my opinion, things that we've suggested that we haven't been able to get yet. So I hate to try to do something like this that's going to be so much bigger, and then we're not even getting some of the smaller things.
I think they can look at some of that, that's some of the low hanging fruit that you're talking about.
Yes.
It's putting in stripes, it's putting in crosswalks, it's putting in signage. That stuff could be taken care of in the interim. I think that's something that we would need to go to staff, go to village board as well. But I think by doing this, you are not prohibiting those other things from occurring, because that may need to happen just for the safety reasons that are, things that are going on out
Are
there.
like those the kinds of things they would be recommending in
They
this?
could look at that as well. Yes, I'm sure they would. And look at different places. Sorry.
I guess from my standpoint, I've been in the village a long time and have seen changes that years ago I wouldn't envision the way the village looks now. And especially, I think of the Holmgren corridor, right, or it was Gross Avenue or whatever. And that area of the village has changed so much, just the use of it has changed so much, but it's gonna change again, and we don't know what it's gonna be in 10 years. But if we do a planning now, we look at it now, that's just another tool to say, here's what we're gonna do in 5 years, here's what things we should consider in 10 years. Because I don't wanna be in a position where, well, why didn't we think of that 5 years ago? It would have been easier to do it now if we'd have been thinking about it for 5 years. So to me, this is not necessarily something, we're gonna get the study and say, we're gonna make this change and this. No, I think we're gonna get the study and say, here's what we're gonna consider doing in the future. And here's the things we have to be aware of when we build a new condo or we build another 3 apartment buildings or whatever. So to me, this is just more information that will help us in the future. Not that we're gonna have to make changes now, but it's just gonna be out there so everybody knows. So when something comes up, we'll have a second opinion, a second perspective on whatever changes we consider making.
That whole area is gonna change anyways. Isn't that where Bellin is?
Bellin's down way at South End. Or like on
But
the
you still,
Wabian.
all that traffic's gonna increase.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's not just Bellin that's gonna build
Right.
it once they're up.
Yeah.
That's
All
gonna
the
change the site of the
apartments.
district.
Yeah, all the apartments and.
So I'm with you. I think maybe we don't do the changes now, but at least we've got some visibility of what could be done.
Yeah, so to me.
And that could change too.
Yeah, to me, it's not that we're gonna plan to put sidewalks here. No, we're just gonna know what we need to know. Because the worst thing is you don't know what you don't know.
So we might be able to use it in other areas
Yeah.
too, at least it's a learning curve.
I think what Jessica is saying is, do we have to wait for that plan? Because if we do have things immediate right now, we can do it immediate right now. Striping and what have you without, and then the county might say, striping's needed, oh, we got it done already. That's what you're saying.
Yeah, like there's things I don't want,
Yes.
because you said this is gonna be how many years, like realistically, they're not gonna do this study for a while. And then by the time it goes back and forth
Until
the board,
next year.
all these things, like there's a lot of things that I think we could be doing as a village now to already increase the safety, and that I don't want all that to be on hold because we're waiting
Right.
for a study that.
Because the board
Because
has it,
right,
saying,
they're gonna
hey,
say, well, let's wait and do this when there's
Yeah,
things that I feel like we could try to be doing ourselves. And then again, there are a lot of things popping up on here, so do they take all that into consideration with the planning? I just feel like, and the road just got redone, so I would assume, and maybe I shouldn't assume that, I should back up on that. Was there a study done when this all just got done? I would assume there was some kind of something done then.
Now, if I could, because it sounds like there's kind of a divide a little bit on the committee anyway, as far as what the scope of the work would be.
Yeah.
What we could do is I could ask Cole to prepare kind of a written scope of services. And from that written scope of services, what we could look at as part of that study effort is what are some short-term, meaning like immediate things that could be done with the current typical section? And then what would be something that you would look towards then that would be more longer-term improvement? And I understand and respect and agree with the concerns that the committee has identified specific areas of concern that we're trying to address in the short term. My only caution to that is, do we really have a sound understanding without maybe, let's say, Cole's expertise to help us in determining if that's the right move? So as an example, putting a mid-block crossing between Premier and, what's the street here? I'm sorry? Morris, excuse me. So, we talked about putting a mid-block crossing there. Is that really the best thing from a safety standpoint, is to install another mid-block crossing? Or do we simply just enhance the crosswalk here at Morris? I don't know, but through that effort, that could be something that Cole looks at. And that's one of those short-term issues that doesn't cost a significant amount of money that can still address that. And so we can look at that, right?
Well, that's what I think. I want to make
Yeah.
sure they're gonna
Yes.
look at some of those things, and it's not just we're gonna look at doing 3 lanes, because I feel like if
Yes.
it's something like that, to be honest, I don't see it probably getting approved anyway, so I hate to say it, but waste everybody's time with it. And then we're focusing on something like that when we could be focusing on if they could give us other ideas and suggestions that are we're actually gonna be able to get the village to approve as well. So as long as they're looking at everything, not just like one idea coming in for it.
And
'cause I
that's not
think-
what it is. It's not, they're not coming in with one idea.
So I think that in itself makes a big difference. That's why I was asking, like, what will they all look at? Because again, I agree that everything's different. Even Bohemian's adding another one. These are all these people coming in here. We need to plan for the future for it for sure. But wondering, like, does it include all those little things? And
Well,
if
even
they
Morris
could break them
Avenue
out, that'd be
is
great.
being done right now, correct? So Morris might be a short term also, because that's an intersection with this corridor, just like Warren and all the other streets that, correspond with this. So maybe that's another one they can look at early as well.
And then we can go to public safety, which can also give us input, and then we'll have a better idea.
So if it's agreeable for the committee, what I can do is ask Cole to prepare kind of a written scope of services so we can have a real firm and concrete idea of what that study would look like, the timing of the study, how long it would take, who would need to be involved, and we can kind of configure it so that this committee has ample opportunities to provide feedback to what the recommendation will be within the study. Of course, it's going to go through board. But then we can also work through that and put together some expectations within that scope that identifies what are those low-hanging fruits with our current typical section, and then what would that long-term, if you were to reconstruct the road today, kind of what would be a short-term, what would be a mid-term, kind of mid-level of expense, and then what would be, if you were to reconstruct the road, given what we know today for planning purposes, what that would look like, and we could sort of do that.
Do we have to make a motion for Joel to be able to do this?
I would say we should probably make a motion.
For whatever Joel just quoted.
That's why I said that, I'm like,
Yes,
oh, okay.
if the committee's agreeable to that, motion would be to direct staff to ask the county to provide a scope of services for the committee's consideration of this next meeting.
And then we'll go to the next meeting. Okay.
Can we put in their scope of services with short-term, I just like.
Well, that's what
Joel
a scope
did.
of services would say,
Yeah.
within title. I don't think you have to spell
And we
that
can
out.
break it apart then.
Yeah, we can see. We can see what,
I hope so.
so Cole will come back and say, here's what we're gonna do. And we can decide, do we want to do it?
Yeah, and this is how it would be divided up. This is what I would, maybe short term, this is long term, this is what we would look at, this is how we would interact and do the process. So they would spell it out and
As long as we
then
can divide it up.
we could look at it
Okay.
at the next meeting and then decide from there. That's,
And again, you'll see the draft scope of services, so if it doesn't identify your areas of
Yes,
yep.
concern, then we can certainly make sure they get
Okay.
included in that before any action is taken.
so the motion would be that we would ask, the staff will work with Cole or ask Cole to put together a scope of services for us to look at the Holmgren Way section and bring it back to our next meeting for our review.
Yeah, I second
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, everybody. All right, we'll go backtrack to the old 7A. Update on winter trail maintenance plan for the 2022-2023 session. And Rex, you put this together?
Well, I think the green sheet on it. So we did, as a collective team, meet a couple of days ago, late last week regarding winter trail maintenance. Again, knowing that this is the first crack that we have at it, we don't know if what's too much, what's too little, what we're gonna be able to do. So a couple things that were brought up is, some of this is based off of some of our previous conversations from previous bike and ped committees. Was we're gonna be trying the Ashwaubenon River Trail, okay? From the marina down to the pump station, and then from the pump station up to Broadway, that's already done by the water department. So basically the whole Ashwaubenon River Trail can be plowed. We're looking at doing sand acres, from Grant up to Maine. The question is whether that would work if we also plowed the new section, which would then make for a loop, continuous loop around. But right now, and that's still under discussion a little bit, but right now it's from Grant up to West Main on sand acres. And then we had also talked about the Wabi Trail. I know, Tracy, that was one of the ones that you were pushing for, so we thought we'd try the Wabi Trail. Still a few things to try and figure out in terms of going over the bridge. We really don't have any equipment, because of the type of bridge it is to go over the bridge. We have to figure out what's going to work best for plowing snow on the creekway there. But that being said, those were the sections that we discussed. Obviously, we'd be buying. A lot of those are straight shots, so it would be fairly easy to do, except for the Ashwaubenon River Trail, which is kind of the #1 priority, I believe, from the committee. We'd have to buy some snow whips for that, just because that's kind of undulating back and forth around trees and especially behind Bay Harbor and Pioneer Metal Finishing.
Explain snow whips, what that actually is.
Oh,
I
they're
don't know
just
if everybody knows or not.
fiberglass sticks that probably are
Okay.
about 4 feet.
Okay.
And it's kind of they're used as a guide, because once the snow is on the ground, you won't see the trail. And so it's kind of a guide for with the trackless or a pickup truck with a blade on it to where do I go? Am I either be flying through grass, or am I actually on the trail? So it would be putting those intermittently on as a guide.
So Rex, did you guys talk about argon? Are you gonna continue to clear
they-
argon
they would
because
be-
of the packer use in that area?
Yeah,
Okay,
they
so
would
that one
continue
will be
argon.
done for sure.
Now, in terms of ongoing maintenance, because we're looking at these as a recreational type trail, we're looking at a 72-hour window, just because the priorities are gonna be the sidewalks within the village, so the safe routes to school, as well, as well as the streets. So we're looking at a little bit longer timeline. Once the main things are done, then we can go and try and clear out the recreational trail sections. In terms of ongoing maintenance of the trails, we probably would be sanding versus salting, just to maintain the integrity of the asphalt that's on the trail, because it obviously lasts longer than the street. And we don't want to keep on redoing our trails because of salt usage, or grinding or milling. It's not as easy to do that on a trail as it is on the street. So it would be salted as
Sanded you?
what's that?
Sanded.
Sanded, I'm sorry. It would be sanded. That's what they're looking at right now, or what we're looking at. Again, it's all going to be a learning experience this first winter. We don't know. We think we have the ability to do it. These are the goals that we've set, basically, and we'll see if we can meet our goals. We may need to reel it back in a little bit and eliminate a trail, or maybe it's so easy that, hey, we can do another trail. We won't know until we go through a full season.
So are you using pickup trucks? Is that what you use with the plows on the front, or is there something else, or the one that you use on the back?
That will be determined by Public Works, but I'm assuming it's going to be a combination of the trackless and the clean, or a pickup truck with a blade. We don't have anything specific for trails. The McLeans are great for one aspect. For sidewalks, it's about a 4 or 5 foot clearance type of a thing. So if we're gonna make one pass down the middle, then it's the whole trail, the whole 10-foot trail may not be plowed. It may be right in the middle where it's like a 5-foot clearance right down the line. And that'll save time too, and they're trying to figure out exactly where the edges are, and less restoration in the spring. But it would be open for usage for people to walk on or take their pets on, or whatever they're gonna be used for.
I think it really sounds good, Rex, and I guess I'm concerned that we just do it, we find out what we need to do in the future. Like you said, it's a learning experience, a learning curve. The village has never done this before, so it's not gonna be perfect the first year. I hope it is. I don't expect it to be. But I think it's gonna be good, and we're gonna be able to get some input. We're gonna see how this works, and then we'll decide next year what we want to do.
I would just ask everybody for patience during this first year, because there's going to be obviously plowing on some of the trails. Let's take Wabi. There's a lot of driveways on Wabi, and the businesses are going, we're gonna plow, and it's gonna be plowed in. And we're gonna be almost fighting each other with these cornrows with the snow.
Are you gonna reach out to all the businesses and talk to them? Because I know that,
We will be sending them a
Free
letter.
cleared all of theirs all last year. And then there was one or two other businesses that cleared theirs as well.
It was discussed that the letter would be sent to businesses saying this is a trail clearing season on a trial basis, and we're gonna see what happens. And if you wanna clear it on your own, you're welcome to do it. It would eliminate those roads, you know.
Yeah,
That way we
that's
can pick
doing
our
that.
blade up and go
Yeah,
right
we'll just
through
go,
and.
yeah, because I don't know why Free did it, but they did it all last year, so.
I haven't said that, Rex. So what do they do today? Because I walk Pioneer. You've seen me, right? I do that during the winter every year. And unfortunately, the same thing happens there. So they do the sidewalk and then somebody comes and plows by the police station, right? And now it's plowed this high in the sidewalk and nobody comes back and cleans it. Not so much for myself, but there's a lot of kids that walk that sidewalk even in the winter.
Well,
So is there somebody that comes back and takes a peek, or do they just?
And therein lies the rub on the whole thing of trying this.
Yeah, well, especially with the business.
Yeah, with the businesses, we don't have anyone specifically assigned to that. Everyone's got different duties, you know, within public works and park and recreation.
Yeah.
And so those duties, you know, take as an equal, if not more priority than additional snow clearing that goes on, you know, for any new clearing. So that's why we're a little bit wary of how well we're going to be able to manage it. And it's not the initial clearing when it happens, because we'll be able to do that. It's the management of it after, you know, and someone else coming back in, and we cannot. It's going to be difficult to continue to come back and check and keep things as clear as everyone I know would like to have it. So, you know, I think there needs to be some kind of patience and just seeing what we can manage, and is that going to be enough to make people happy, to keep people safe when they're out there?
You might be okay
know.
there because you're 72 hours later or whatever. They may have their
Right.
lots plowed before you even come through.
It's true.
I'm hoping that's what happens there. In the case of schools, they usually get them sidewalks done before the drive. You know, they're pretty quick about getting those done.
So we don't know. We don't know. So everyone's a little like, you know, looking at each other. Like,
Yeah.
how do we want to do this? So, but it'll be a learning experience. I just ask everyone to have patience with us as we figure things out of what can and cannot be done on a timely basis.
The key for us administratively is just recognizing that these are not sidewalks or trails. So statutorily, we want to make sure that people understand that this is for recreational use. It's not a sidewalk. We're not obligating ourselves to clearing it or obligating the adjacent abutting property owners from clearing it, because if you deem it a sidewalk, both statutorily and under municipal code, you are obligating that adjacent property owner to maintain that. Or the village maintains it and then bills that back. So these are recreational trails to be used for recreational purposes, to maintain that recreational immunity and that eliminate that statutory obligation for clearing activities. Really what we're looking at is that early season, keeping the trails clear of those events so you can walk very, very easily in December, maybe early January. Certainly going into late February and March, the trails will be cleared because the radiant heat from the sun will keep those trails cleared because there's not a significant amount of snowpack. They'll be cleared through January and February, but as everyone knows, when the conditions aren't favorable and we're sanding the trails, there's not a high angle of the sun or high radiant heat. They're not going to be perfect and perfectly cleared. And there's going to be drifting. There's going to be probably ice buildup at times, or we'll try to stay on top of it with sanding. But it's just to be maintained for recreational purposes so that we avoid some of those obligations.
Either way, it's a big positive step, I feel
Yeah.
like, in the right direction. And again, I think educating and having everyone be patient, I agree, but hopefully we learn a lot. And then,
Yeah. Well, since it's a pilot, maybe, and I probably staff will do this, like really keep track of how many hours you're putting in, what's working, what's not working. So then we can look at it at the end of the season and go, okay, you know, come back to this group and say, these are our struggles, or these worked really well, or whatever, we found this was this. So then we have a good feel for it and, you know, how much work it really was. This is the first time it's a change, you know?
some data to work with.
Right, exactly.
For sure.
I'm sorry, Joe.
Yeah, I was just gonna add, we put 72 hours kind of as our operating policy. That doesn't mean that we're waiting until 72.
No, yeah,
Right,
no,
yeah.
I know that.
It's just,
You get to.
depending on the event, and,
Yep.
we'll look at the weather for the week. If we get a snow event on a Monday, we're out doing clearing activities, and we know we're gonna get another accumulating snow event on Wednesday, we might not come out to that trail until Friday or the following Monday to do the clearing activities, just because of how that week progresses, right?
I think that's what's hard with all of this is there's so many variables with the timeframes, and it could snow again, and same thing with the clearing and the re-clearing. So that's why I think it is important that everyone should understand it's gonna be a learning year. And this year could be also very different from what next year is. The next year might be, because we
Exactly.
could get tons of snow or no snow.
Exactly.
It always changes.
All right, so it looks like we need a recommendation on this. So are we really looking for a recommendation in regard to what trails we want for sure? Is that what we're looking for?
Is everyone
Joe?
okay with those sections that?
So we're talking about Sand Acres from Grant to West Main, Wabi Trail, the River Trail, pardon? Argonne,
is a
yep, and then
standard.
Ashwaubenon River Trail. Those are the ones that we're gonna,
I guess the one question that you didn't say was the new Main Avenue Trail, to make that
Okay.
L, which means they could go on South Ridge and
Yeah,
and do
they
like
could
almost a
come.
walking loop. Part of it would be on the trail, the other part would be on Ridge on the roadway.
so we'll go to the
Yeah,
west
but it
of the
would
new
give them a loop.
subdivision. You're talking east. Oh, so east and south and west and there.
So you're coming out on Sand Acres and then
Yes.
the new trail that goes to Monroe Truck is eastward.
Got it. I'm sorry, yes.
And those are the ones that you guys feel is worth guessing.
Those are what
doable.
we're willing to try this year, or that we thought would be doable.
Well, that's what I
I
said.
don't want to say willing to try, we're willing to try anything that's directed to, I mean,
Honestly, it's a lot more than I thought, so
Yeah.
that's why I'm like, you think that's doable? Awesome.
but we don't know.
Right, won't know till you try it,
This may need to change midwinter,
for sure.
but
Mhm.
we'll try this and see how it works.
Well, and I'm sure you guys too can prioritize too. If
Yeah,
it's
I
not
get-
working, like, all right, we're not gonna worry about this one as much.
Yeah, I guess my feeling is we should leave it to the discretion of the people who are gonna actually do the work.
I agree.
That they understand our objective and I'm sure they'll do their best to meet our hopes, but being realistic, you can only do so much, so.
We've got a track list that is kept out at the Ashwaubenon Sports Complex to clear out the track list is a one with a rotating blade or a blower, and there's different type of things. But it's used to clear all the Ashwaubenon Sports Complex, which is a job in and of itself, that whole lot and the roadways and stuff.
For sure.
So that being out in that sector already would probably be what's used to do Sand Acres potentially, unless we just use a pickup with the blade. We're not sure on that. Again, that's up to Public Works because their crews are the ones typically going to be doing that work. Ours, the Park and Rec staff that are there will do some of it, but under direction of Public Works, based on whatever workload they have.
So.
And I understand it too, but I still want to bring up the Packerland trail area that I live by, and we aren't going to be able to address any of that. And I know there's a lot of challenges because it's a county road, correct, Packerland? Yeah. And
Packerland is a county
so
road.
you don't have control over the plowing and when they come through and if they smear it all. But if this works good, maybe someday we can get that plowed.
Yep.
Because there are a
It's a
lot of
busy
walkers.
trail.
There's a lot of walkers.
Yep. That one's busy too.
It is. I
Yeah.
see them every morning.
Mm-hmm.
So are you considering Packerland?
Not considering
No.
Packerland.
No, from Packerland on Main?
No.
Well, if you're
from
gonna
where's-
use the machine from,
Yeah,
why wouldn't he just go down?
Because it's more time. It's all better. It's all about time.
I'm wondering if we should, that's why I'm wondering if we shouldn't allow you guys to try to figure out what's the best way to get some data. Because if he's going that way anyways, it's.
So where does it go to then? And that's part of what all the discussion was we had. So,
Well, I'm looking.
so now it opens
What's
up
saying?
onto Packland. Where's it going to go to?
No, not, well,
The west.
why
Main
you're
Trail.
saying where would they walk to?
So right now, the reason we're doing that L is because now you've got a circular loop within a neighborhood. If you take the trail from Sand Acres up to Packerland
Mm-hmm.
and you dump people out on Packerland, where does it go to? There's no other trail being cleared in that area.
Right.
No, my only thought is, so what does he do? He drives on the road and hops on the trail further down. Okay, all right.
But he drives a lot faster.
Obviously.
And we recognize that, like, when you start looking at a map, like, well, you're already here, why don't you just go here and then go here? And it's just a matter of, as Rex had mentioned, is labor hours. How many labor hours can we devote to that single attention? We do plan on, if we use the track list, we'll probably have to trailer the equipment out to some of these locations.
Sure.
Be more efficient and economical for us to trailer it out versus driving it from our shop. We talked about utilizing the one over at Cornerstone for the parking lot there, to kind of that southwest portion of the village. So we got to move people and equipment in order to service those areas. So that's just a big part of it. It's just trying to manage the amount of labor hours to go into it.
Well, and maybe, like Dale was saying, you guys decide on the trails. I mean, or we could make a motion, these are our preferred ones, and if you guys find that you're not gonna hit them, I mean, it might happen anyway. So.
Can we make a motion that we allow them to choose the trails to be clean? Then it's open for them.
Right.
Because we're just, I mean, like we said, we're looking for data, and so are they. What is our real cost? And that could change, like you said, next year could be different than this year. But at least you got a basis.
Right.
Rex, Joel, are you guys open with us leaving it just up to somebody else?
What do you want?
Well,
Just
Specific?
giving Public Works the discretion to decide?
Well, if that's the case, then I think what we would decide is what we presented to you tonight, that those are the trails that we'll be looking for.
Okay, then let's just put
The
those in
appropriate
there.
motion would
Okay.
be to accept
Yep.
Right,
the
yep.
trail clearing plan that was presented, and we'll see what
Yep.
happens.
Okay, so we're talking Sand Acres from Grant to West Main, and then we go east on West Main to Ridge. Then you would make that loop, right? Rex, okay, and then Wabi Trail, Ashwaubenon River Trail, and Argonne would be the ones that we are looking at.
Argonne's not even in the plan because Argonne's already done.
Because I
part
know,
of the
but,
plan.
yeah, okay. Then Argonne, okay.
Yeah,
So
we
maybe
don't
a
need
motion
to-
from someone to approve those.
Approve the plan as presented?
I'll second. Okay. Motion and second to approve the plan as presented. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, and just keep us posted, Rex, as it goes along, how things are going, and like I said.
After it
we're
snows,
excited about it.
hopefully we won't hear from you for
Yeah.
a while.
Yeah, hopefully it'll be like January, February. All right. Okay, the next agenda item 9B is update on village projects that incorporate bike and ped accommodations. Basically just to kind of visit some of the ones that we've been talking about currently. And Joel, I think, and Rex probably put something together, but just to see what kind of priorities we have and go from there on the projects that we've been talking about recently and kind of where they're at and what the update is on them.
Is that this sheet?
We have kind of two
Two that
agenda
kind of tie
items that kind
together.
of tie
I
together,
know.
so if you're comfortable with that, we can certainly tackle both
Okay.
at the same time.
Yeah.
So this sheet here, that you need a magnifying glass to read,
Yeah,
I
I
can
can say,
certainly
well,
put on the screen, but knowing how the screen is, it's probably not gonna be any better. So I'll just kind of try to walk through some projects that we have planned with the village for the next 5 years briefly. So this, again, this sheet was actually developed through our engineering department. So Steve Burr, Doug Martin put this together. This is included as part of every budget for each year, and then the projects that are identified for the next fiscal period, they get incorporated into the budget, and then from there, the budget gets kind of prioritized. So certain projects, they go forward and be maintained in the budget. Other projects get pulled back, and then they get generally pushed forward to a later year. And we'll certainly kind of touch on some of those that are specific to that. So this sheet here, again, not prettied up yet, is the preliminary kind of draft project list that's going to be looked at for the 2023 year budget. And I believe we've talked about a number of these in the past and most recently. So the first one is the Lombardi Access Road. So the area in front of what's now called Metro Market, the Shell Station, over to Argonne. That access road that covers all those businesses fronting Lombardi from Marley to Argonne. That road is proposed to be fully reconstructed next year as part of the tax incremental district number 3 project plan. And that will include the realignment of that road. The road itself will actually shift under the current proposed kind of concept to the north, so closer to Lombardi. That would then allow for pedestrian accommodations to be installed as part of that reconstruct. That would then line the frontage to all those businesses between that stretch. So that's about a $1.6 million budgeted project. Although I'm thinking that number might be low now based on last year's projects. Our village streets mill and pave program, that's an annual reoccurring budgeted amount. That number is just kind of tentative right now. That's likely to go up a little bit, but typically we've been spending between $600,000 and $700,000 a year. Last year we spent closer to $1 million, just based on bid numbers. And what that effectively does is it grinds up the existing asphalt of roads that have a low PASER rating, which is that pavement score rating, and then basically reapplies a new layer or new surface with more asphalt. It is not a reconstruct, so there are what's called point repairs that are done. Those point repairs are like inlet repairs, curb repairs, apron repairs, but just pointed repairs throughout that stretch of road. It's not a full reconstruct where everything comes out. Next year would mark the first year of identified signalized intersection repairs. So Doug had originally put in about $30,000, and that's based on that prioritized list that the committee has identified over the next several years.
Do you know which ones those are at all? Because I remember it going out to bid and I couldn't remember.
I'm not sure if Rex has, do you have that list?
Okay.
I can get that list. I don't have it for today's
Okay.
meeting, but I can certainly get that. I gotta dig through Doug's files a little bit more to get there. Other projects that were identified that we've talked about is Ridge Road from Morris to Valley View. On the east side, there was a proposed sidewalk installation there. That's been kind of on a project list that's been kind of pushed year over year to the future. Really at this point, it's been kind of pushed that way because of opposition and resistance from the neighbors that are along that stretch of road. I think the committee had recommended going forward with that project, so it's being included in the draft budget, but we'll see where the board goes with it as to whether or not that survives the budget. Two other projects that were approved as part of this year's budget was the Brett Favre Pass and Bart Starr Drive. There's small sidewalk sections that are going to be incorporated in those. They were planned to be done this year. They were bid out this year, but they were bid with other projects that came in way over budget, and that bid was rejected. And the plan would be to rebid that either later this year or very early next year to be included in projects for next year's cycle. I will note that the Brett Favre Pass project may come out primarily because we have a developer that's interested in developing the old Jersey store site. And as a result of that, we may be able to get the sidewalk in as part of that redevelopment. So to be determined on that. The next project is Element Way. So where the Element apartments are, buildings 1, 2, and 3 have been completed. Building 4 is being proposed. So that would be the final phase of development for that project. That would result in Element Way being reconstructed from where it terminated at Building 3 over to Oneida Street. So that particular project is a full reconstruct. So that's new curb, new gutter, sidewalk. There'll be some parking aprons that are installed as part of that development. And then Doug had indicated that we would make some efforts to improve some intersection elements at Oneida Street as part of that project. That also includes full reconstruct of water and sewer utilities as well. So that's a pretty substantial project.
Does Element on Oneida Street have lights, or that's not lit, is there?
It is not lit, but it would ask for pedestrian markings and signage at that intersection.
Okay.
Okay, so in addition to that, now I'm just going through the projects that are identified for next year. The next project is a little bit further down on the list, and that's Morris. Morris is planned to be reconstructed between Holmgren Avenue, or Holmgren Way, excuse me, and Oneida Street. And that's directly related to the Hampton Inn project that is being constructed currently. So if you go on that stretch of road, you'll see it. In order to service that hotel and the home to suites, we have to reconstruct the road to improve the water and sewer utilities. Thus, the whole road is getting reconstructed. And that typical section will include sidewalks on both the north and south side of the road, as well as a wide outside lane in accordance to the bike and ped plan, and then improvements to both the Oneida Street intersection, should the county allow for it, and then the Holmgren Way intersection as well. So as of right now, where we're sitting on that particular project is we've done the preliminary survey work for that. AIRS has been assisting the village in that effort. And I would say in the next few weeks, they will have what will likely be like a 30% design completed. And what that means is they're going to have all the utilities and everything located. They're going to be able to put down on a two-dimensional drawing the typical section, and then you'll be able to see the typical section, so you kind of have an understanding of what the project will look like. And so that's Morris. And then the other last project for 2023 would be Brookwood Lane. There is proposed sidewalk on that section of road, I believe from Marley to Argonne. And that again complements the improvements of the Titletown district and increasing the pedestrian access there. So those again are all the 2023 projects. Some of them are obviously in the works as we speak and just doing some preliminary design work. The other projects as we go forward over the next 5 years are projects that have all been identified in both the bicycle and pedestrian plan, as well as any TID project plans, because generally speaking, when the bike and ped plan gets carried forward into these TID plans, it shows up on those as well.
Well, I have a question about that.
Yeah.
I don't remember, I remember, maybe it wasn't on the committee, I remember talking about Ori and Marley and sidewalks, but I didn't know that it was put in the plan.
Yep, Ori and Marley,
They were put in the plan.
they are currently in the plan
And the
for,
same thing with Ridge Road, Wabi to Hanson.
yep, there's a number of, and that's kind of the the talking points for today's meeting. So Ori, Marley,
Yeah.
Ridge Road, Cormier, there's section of Pilgrim, I believe that are on the sheet, that have all been identified in the plan. Now, these projects have shown up both in this plan and in the tax incremental finance project plans. And because of priorities and other issues, they've always just kind of been pushed forward. So they're, I hate to say this, I hate to use this terminology, but at the end of the day, they're kind of placeholders. And then when other priorities come forward, they generally take their place, and they traditionally have been kind of pushed to later years, which has been the traditional case. But they do show up on this 5-year plan.
I think there's one error. You go down to the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7th yellow,
Okay.
8th yellow, I'm sorry, sidewalk. Hanson Road, and then it has friend Wabi to Hanson. Wabi does not go to Hanson. And then it talks about Wabi to Hanson. No,
On
Hanson
Ridge?
is, Wabi and Hanson are parallel.
It's probably
Yeah.
sidewalk from
From
41 to,
Oh,
from
okay.
where Wabi turns into
South end.
Oneida,
Yep, that's what.
Okay,
up to,
okay.
up to
It said
Hanson.
of Hanson Road from Quickwood Apartments, new sidewalk construction on south side of Hanson from Quickwood Apartments to Holmgren Way. It would not be that section.
So the Creekwood apartment, we talked about this as an
Creekwood's on
agenda item
Hanson.
this spring. That was from the Creekwood Apartments on
Yeah.
the
South side.
side
Side.
from Creekwood to Holmgren Way.
Right, but then here it says sidewalk Hanson Road, Wabi to Hanson.
So
Yeah, and I think
where
maybe
we-
that Hanson Road just needs to get pulled from that label, because it's the sidewalk connecting the two.
part of the development project.
Right.
Where Wabi turns into Oneida Street.
Well, I know, okay, Wabi turns into Hanson.
So from basically Highway 41
Yes,
up to Hanson
yes, that's what you're gonna do.
on the east side is what
Yes.
we'd like to see. Probably
But
not
why
gonna
does it
happen,
say
but
Quickwood
it's-
Apartments? Quickwood Apartments is way down.
those are two different projects.
Yeah.
Well, it's on the thing though.
Yeah, I need to update that.
Yeah.
It's so Crickwood would be the error there, and it would be because it's not Crickwood.
Yep.
Got it.
Yeah, it should be
Yeah.
Wabi in that one. And we talked about Ravencrest.
whatever.
Yes,
I
yeah, we went
got
further,
confused.
right? Yeah.
Because the Kirkwood one is further down.
Yeah.
The
Yeah,
Kirkwood one
one
is,
further.
I walked Bristol down to Hanson.
That one,
That's
I
correct.
saw a lady walking on the road coming here in the rain.
Yeah, it's true.
I went, wow, that's just.
So the only other project that's not currently on this list that the committee has talked about, most recently would be that area that I think was on the agenda as well, by Wabi, Allied, Parkview. That area by what will be that Bellin Ambulatory Center, that is not included in the plan as of yet, primarily because we just haven't done enough diligence on that project, and we're still awaiting to hear back from Bellin as to whether or not they're going to include their section on the property that they're designing.
I mean, the reason, this agenda item and then the last one on here, kind of like Joe said, are combined, but the reason I asked, we wanted to put this on here is because all of our other departments have CIP, capital improvement projects. And like Joe's one, this is the public works one, and a lot of the projects that we've talked about and that we have in our list show up in here. But then I was just wondering if it would be something that we would want to look at some of our projects and do our own CIP that then could coordinate with Public Works and also with Parks and Recreation Department, because some of them are, you know, all encompassing, like stuff that Rex is putting in, maybe at a park might run into a road project or whatever. You know, and some of the things that aren't on the list that we've talked about more recently that, you know, are just different ones that we did. For example, we talked about, the ones that's not on here. We approved bike lanes being striped on South Point Road. And that's something that we had talked about and we wanted to include. And Quick Trip's going in up there fairly soon, I would imagine they will be open. So there's different things that we maybe talk about that don't get in the public works because maybe they're smaller, like Jessica mentioned before, like a low hanging fruit type thing. But they might have some budget ramification to it. You know, it's the paint, it's the time for the guys to be out there and do the work, or the crew, I should say. So I didn't know if it was important for us to do like a 5-year plan as well of things that we have. I mean, the things, the sidewalk on Hanson has been on here forever. I mean, Leroy talks about it every dang time, you know, why are we getting this done, you know? And it's really important to us, but it doesn't fall in importance quite as high to the public works end of it. So is it something that's important for us to put our 5 projects, 10 projects, whatever it would be, or have a CIP on what year we would like to see it, because then it's incorporated and it goes into the budget process and it can be part of that whole discussion, because we're talking about public works, we're talking about Park and Rec. You know, Rex handed out the Concord plan that Park Board goes through every year. And we pick out projects that we would like to see each year. This goes on to the budget process, and these are considered. But it just seems like stuff coming out of here sometimes doesn't necessarily get into that whole process.
It does, that's what this whole sheet is.
Some of it does, you're right, some of it does and get in there, but some does not. So that was the only
And
question.
I will go to say that, and I'm sticking up for the village on this. I would go to say on the core plan, there's projects that, you know, it's been on there for 10 years that keep on getting pushed forward. So it's a matter of prioritizing what projects you want and what we can do based on, you know, what reconstruction is happening, what makes it easier and most cost efficient to get.
Oh, absolutely, and I agree with that. I mean, it's not like something that we're asking for should take priority over anything else, but at least we know about it, and then when that project maybe is coming up for resurfacing or whatever, it's something that we've talked about and is important, and then when Public Works is looking at it, they go, you know, this was on their list, we should incorporate this or something. So I guess a way to.
Sure, and I'm just an advisory member of this, but I would not put years on it. If you want to do a priority, like here's our 5 priorities coming up, and if you can squeeze them in so you know what they are, or even make it your 10 priorities. You know what I mean? So because there's a lot of different projects on here in corporate.
Right, absolutely.
So potentially make your 10, but don't put a year on it, because then people think, well, it's going to be done in this year, and it certainly may, maybe push 5 years down the line, but they know it's still one of our priorities.
I guess when I get information like this, I see it as an opportunity to say, well, what about this? What about the Hanson Road stripes? Or we can look at it and say, 5 years ago, we thought this was a good idea, but maybe we don't need to do that. So it's our chance to relook at everything we've done in the past, and just if there's something that we feel strongly about, this is our opportunity to say, you guys, take a look at this. We'd really like to have you do this in next year, the year after. Push that up on your priority list if you can. And also, it's our opportunity to say, maybe we don't need to do this.
Right.
So I guess I'm kind of agreeing with Rex. We've told them what we want them to do. And we are, as much as I'd like to do everything next year, we have to operate in the scope of what the village budget and everything else is done. So, I guess I'm thinking
These projects, I don't want to say we compete against each other, but that's almost what it is. There's a finite amount of dollars.
Right.
There's a couple different pots, whether it be TIF or general fund or anything like that, but there's public works projects, there's public safety projects, there's the park and recreation corp plot projects, there's, all the bike and ped projects. And it's everyone wants their projects to be the priority. And it's difficult sometimes to get them all done at once.
You're never gonna get them.
You're not. So that's why I'm very hesitant, when we're talking about putting years on it or something like that. In general, what are your priorities? Great, but I wouldn't do the years just because everyone, who knows what's going to be approved or directed by our village board. And what the priorities are based on what developments are happening.
So you're saying no years on the 5-year comp plan then?
We were talking about, I think, making a bike and ped list with priority projects and what years the bike and ped committee would like to see them done, and then I'm saying you can do that. What are your priorities? But I wouldn't even venture to go with the years. That's just me personally. Joel, you can jump in.
Yeah,
Bail me out here.
No, I agree. So what I would also offer is that the projects that are listed on this sheet are coming directly from
the
that
bike and
sheet,
ped plan.
from the bike and ped plan. And so Public Works is taking a document
Which
that
has
has
some
been
recreation trails.
prepared with public input, that's been vetted through this committee, that was adopted by the village board. Public Works doesn't necessarily decide per se what the priority is. They try to list them out over a 5-year period to provide balance throughout that 5-year project period so that there's not these ebb and flows. But there's also conditions that we as staff also recognize too. So Ori and Marley, those two projects alone are going to be highly, highly controversial projects that are going to take 2 to even 3 years of proper planning if you're going to have a successful project. And what I mean by that is you're going to have substantial opposition from those adjacent property owners. And is the board ready to make that decision, right? So sometimes it's not only about money, but it's also about political will and what effort do we want to put towards those things, because the low-hanging fruit is sometimes the easiest one to grab, right? It's the easiest one to bear. So a lot of the projects that have been completed over the last 5 to 10 years have been those low-hanging fruit projects where you're not going to get substantial opposition for, or they are the direct result of some type of development or reconstruction project where it's that easy, right? Next year, there's $8.9 million worth of projects in there. That's a substantial amount. So the other factor to those two other issues is that our ability to accomplish and complete projects is also limited to the resources that we have as far as labor and staff. That $8.9 million worth of projects next year is going to be our limit from a staff perspective. That's going to be really hard for us to complete. If we start adding in additional scope, that's going to be hard as well. So we're cognizant of all those things from a staff perspective. It's not whether we want the project to be completed or not. It just comes down to timing resources, availability, and the political will of the elected board in order to complete those projects. Projects like Cormier, Hanson, Pilgrim, Ridge, Ori, Marley, those are substantial projects that will require a great deal of effort on the front end to get the general public aligned with those projects. And that's why they've been traditionally kind of pushed off, because some of these other projects are really easy to accomplish because they're not going to require that kind of engagement.
Quite honestly, the real tough nuts have to have a really, really good reason to move those up further. And I hate that. I mean, I'll say that. I mean, unless there are significant amount of injuries or deaths or whatever, you know, the low-hanging fruit projects are sure, why not keep going after those versus, you know, political suicide moving for individual. And I hate to say it, but that's kind of what it is. I know it's what we would like to see in some areas as a committee as a whole, but unless there's a real strong reason to do it, I think, you know, the bill probably would be going after more of the low-hanging fruit projects.
As evidenced by the Ridge Road sidewalk that a couple of property owners are objecting to, and we're having trouble getting that. Can you imagine trying to get a sidewalk on Ori Lane with 100 property owners? So, yeah, I guess, you know, I think this is our opportunity to look at the projects that are coming up and give our input. And so it's not like someone's just gonna come down and say, well, here's what we're doing next year, sorry for you guys. They will listen to us. They may say no, but at least they're gonna listen to us, and that's all I would ask. Is we have a chance to offer our input, and just like Parks Department does, and the Street Department does, and Public Safety does, you know, everybody can go to the village and say, here's what we'd like to have done, here's the reasons we haven't done, and then the trustees have to decide. That's their job. But I guess all I ask is we take our shot just like everybody else, and we have a chance to do that.
I read the agenda and going, why are we developing a 5-year priority schedule when we have this? But now, I mean, I thought it was redundant, but now it makes sense to what you're saying is prioritize what's on this list, even though we have years, like Rick said, and that makes sense.
Everything we have on our list.
Well,
It may change.
but we have to put Leroy's first. Anything else goes, but we gotta put Ansonville first.
Yes.
It's higher on the list.
Yes.
That's way higher
Yeah.
on this. That was a little.
Leroy Vote Memorial.
Yeah.
It's Bike Lane.
Yeah. No, we don't want to do memorial. We want it to be here. We need to use it. Okay, so having said that, are we saying that the information that's already provided, the corp and the public works one is enough? Or are we saying we would like to put something together as a committee that we want to at least put forward? Or maybe look at public works and see what they're putting, because maybe quite a bit of what we're talking about is already in their corp and we can support it as it goes forward.
Didn't we put a priority list together for Doug, or what was that all about?
We did the sidewalk thing.
A couple of years ago.
Yeah, so I mean, can't we just work with what's there?
I mean, we've got, this is what we've done over the years
Yeah.
that you've been keeping up, I believe. So this does list, you
Well, we
know, the
don't,
last
it's
few
not
years.
prioritized.
It isn't, but it's things that we've talked about in the recent past.
But
So,
don't we have the ability, Joel, help me out with this. Don't we have the ability, let's say we see something on here and this is great, we like to move something based on financial, right, stability and being able to afford to do it, to change that next year or, so I'm with you that we need to prioritize. We
right,
need to have, so, and they need visibility
right,
so that they know what we're looking for, and then they have to make decisions based off of the budget
right.
and personnel and all that good stuff. I get that. So I'm not against what you're saying. I'm just saying, can we?
Well, maybe the easiest way to do it is using the public works, what they're putting together. We take a look at it and see if there's anything on there that we want to weigh in on, say, yeah, that's important, we think that's good. Or we think this is a better, you know, the bike and pet can kind of weigh in on that stuff and say where it's at on their list.
Well, I think we always have that opportunity to weigh in on it. If that's gotta be public information, And if we say to Joel, we want to know what Public Works is doing next year, he'll print out a sheet, we can look at it, we can say, we'd like to add this, and somebody else will decide that.
Who put the dates on here? Did we put the dates on, or is that Public Works?
Public Works, this is
Public
their,
Works.
yeah.
Okay.
This one here has been updated with Doug's departure. I've gone through and kind of updated that to align with what we have planned right now. So as an example, Morris Avenue, that got advanced, that $4 million got advanced because Hampton Inn is going in now. So that was advanced from 2024.
Yeah, so things change.
Element Way was another one. We weren't anticipating building 4 going in for at least a year to 2 years, so that was planned for 2024 as well. That got advanced because building 4 is being proposed for later this year. So some of those larger scale projects get moved up, and that's part of the reason why some of these projects get pushed off too. Again, just having the resources to manage projects, things kind of come and go based on what's happening around.
So another department had input and said, we need to do it this year, just like, hopefully we'll have input to say, we need to move this up.
Right.
You know, I don't know that we're really asking to change anything than the way we're doing stuff now. I mean, we have input now, I believe. I believe you do. I mean, it's all,
Yeah, a lot of it mirrors what we're already doing, so it shows it's working.
This is from all
Right,
all
that's
the.
theirs.
so, yeah, I kind of think we've already done that. We've already said, here's what we want done in 5 years, here's what we want done in 10 years, here's what we'd like to done someday. So I guess I don't,
Okay, so we'll leave it as Public Works is doing the CIP. We'll have a chance to look at it prior to budget time and weigh in on it. And then, bring our recommendations with that, or say, yeah, we think this is great. Or maybe we can think about this or whatever, and then we'll just go from there. So we won't really do our own. We'll use what's being put together by Public Works and just be able to look at that and weigh in on that.
And I think like on our document, like you said, we already kind of do that. And I think we just
Right.
have to be conscious of like our top 5 or 10
Yes.
on our own document for us to use internally. And
Yeah.
I don't think that makes.
Well, and
Yeah.
for
That'll
Doug,
help with deciding this.
Exactly.
Right.
I would imagine that if there's a update going on a street, I would hope that somebody's looking at our wants.
I believe
When
they look
that's,
at the
I would
bike
think
bike
it is. I
and
mean, that's the way it seems like it's been working.
Yeah.
So, a really good example is Morris Avenue. Obviously, we're working towards that. We met with ARIS last week to talk through the preliminary survey data, look at that. And then we started talking about, okay, what is the typical section scope for this project? We know that we want sidewalks on both sides of the street. The bike and ped plan identifies intersection improvements at Holmgren and at Oneida. So we got to figure out logistically how that fits in. So that's part of their design scope. And then also the bike and ped plan identifies Morris Avenue as a bike route, not designated bike lanes, but a wide outside lane. So when they design that typical section, that's what they're incorporating into their design. It's consistent with the plan. At the end of the day, if the committee wants to amend the plan, that the plan itself is what gives direction to staff. And so when we work with those engineers, that's what we're basing our decisions off of, that plan, not on our own intuition. It's based off of the input from the plan.
Yeah, so it's working well, really.
So what we're saying is keep this way it is. In the Titletown District, Ori Lane, it says that in 2026, that's when they plan it. So in 2024, we have to start our work in promoting it. But what we have to do is look at the dates, keep the dates the same, but start promoting it ahead of time.
Yes.
Well, and part of that too is, okay, so like Ridge Road, for example, right? That's next year. Now this is a little crunch timeline, but to use your example, in 2024, we're reaching out to those residents on Ori and we're seeking public input, not only from those residents, but all residents. In 2024, whoever is the elected body, they could say, there's no way in heck we're doing this project because we're going to be put out the pasture real quick. That project's getting pushed back. Or, a lot of these projects here are also retrofits. So we're going in without doing a reconstruct of the road to install sidewalk. Maybe the elected body at that time would say, you know what, we want to do sidewalk there, but let's wait till we do a full reconstruct we have to tear everything out anyway. Because doing reconstructs or retrofits doing retrofits are gonna be where you're gonna run into a lot of opposition.
And I think it's the way it should be. I mean, the body as a whole makes a decision. There's a ebb and flow and a give and take, and I think it's good when that stuff happens. I mean, I always like the end result, but.
It's consensus and it's collaboration, right?
Yeah,
Just building consensus and working from that.
All right, so any other questions? So we really combined to update on the village shop and then discussion on the 5-year plan. Any other questions or comments on that? Otherwise, we're gonna stick with the CAP that Public Works doing. We'll get a look at it. We'll keep doing this document that we've been putting together for years to help us.
If we see
Keep
we gotta
track of
change,
our
make a change,
projects,
we'll make
right?
a change.
Yep, we'll do it that way.
Sounds good.
Any other comments or questions on that, anybody? Okay. Then any review and possible action on the 2018 plan projects? That's this document. Anything we need to add or anything to this? I think this we updated and it's pretty well set.
Yeah, I don't think we've
One
got
that
any,
we've looked at. I think
put
we've done
updates
anything.
in there.
We've got the last ones in here that we recently talked about, so. And department reports, 11A, anything from Park and Recs? Park and Recreation?
Grafe, we decided some electrical station locations on Grafe, so right now they're working on utility locations. WPS is working on that now in terms of designing utility locations in Ashwaubenon for the Southern Bridge Landing. And then as Joel alluded to a little bit earlier, we did meet with the residents along Broadway last week again, just to talk about the bridge and hear some of the concerns over again.
So that's the bridge, for those of you that, that's the bridge that goes across
Yep.
the river. How did your meeting go?
It went.
Yeah. Was there opposition?
They have the same concerns as when they started out. Yeah.
Anything else? Yes.
No, I'm good.
Thank you. Public safety, Brian Murphy, or, can't remember the gentleman's name, I had it on a different list.
Lieutenant Ben Limbo here.
That's right, Limbo, yes. Lieutenant Limbo. Anything you guys have to share?
Boy, has this been an exciting meeting for you or what?
Yeah.
What is this?
Well, as a understated man of few words. Just to catch up on a couple things here and there. Traffic enforcement, we are still trending in a good direction, which is pretty impressive considering the fact that we're still down bodies right now. School starting back up. We had a few things right before the school year started. We had a Frogger deployment, which is a pedestrian enforcement deployment on Thursday, August 30th. We had our CSO out there and a couple of officers out there assigned specifically to that. Our CSO estimated we probably had about 120 vehicles that did everything right and legal. We had some that fudged it a little bit, so we ended up having 9 traffic stops. We did give out warnings on education. This focused very much on education. We did also issue citations for speed and seatbelts as part of this as well. With the school year starting, we have started resuming our directed patrol in school zones, both preschool and after school. Thus far this month, we've got about 60 directed patrol events that have happened predominantly around the schools, but also our other traffic complaint locations in the village. So those have trended back up, and that's just for the first half of the month thus far. So getting some good attention around the schools, getting some good stops around the schools, having a good presence there, trying to prevent issues. As far as overall trends, like I said, I'm sorry, I didn't mention crashes, but crashes are still trending below where they were pre-COVID. That has not rebounded, which is a good thing. As far as traffic citations, traffic enforcement, like I said, that is coming back up. as far as with the bike and ped committee, looking specifically at bike and ped crashes this year, we have had 3 so far that are reportable crashes involving bikes and pedestrians. I had that data up here shortly, but it logged me out. So I can go a little bit more detail if you want, but so far, 3 this year. We had one over on the west side, distracted driver. We had another one on Pilgrim and Oneida, crosswalk issue with that one as well. So with that, Ben, anything else to add?
No, just a lot of events, a lot of traffic, so. Wondering ways and events. We don't know. It's only gonna get worse with Packer season.
Do you ever monitor Ridge where the crosswalk is from the stadium parking lot over to Titletown? Where they actually have the flashing lights?
Yep, we did a Frogger deployment there earlier this spring.
Okay.
We mixed up our deployment locations for this recent one, but the spring Frogger deployment, we did monitor that crosswalk. We did get some citations out of that crosswalk.
I was surprised because I've always had good results taking my grandkids, but the last couple of times, I mean, I'm telling you, they just come flying through there. And I mean, I don't know how they could miss them flashing lights. It was a good experience because I told the kids, now you understand, you do not walk out. Even if you press the button, you do not walk out till you look both ways. And they don't drive 25 miles an hour. They're moving.
Correct.
But anyways, I was just curious.
So with that, if committee's got any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer as best we can. Otherwise, that concludes the report.
Thank you. Any questions for Brian, anybody?
That's good, thanks.
Thanks, Brian. Thanks, Ben.
Thanks,
Man,
guys.
a few words over there. All right, Dirk, anything from the schools? No?
We are, Mandy Schrader contacted me, and we are doing walk to school. I think walk to school is in the fall, bike to school is in the spring. So walk to school is coming up, and then I know Valley View, Pioneer, and Parkview have all asked for passes again for those kids that are doing that. I believe that's like October 3rd or 10th or something, early October. And the passes will be for a free recreational swim at the high school pool. So we're partnering with the school district again on that.
Thank you. On behalf of Wello, they have signs for yield to your neighbor. If anybody wants to take some and put them up in your yard, we would welcome you to do that. Just grab some and put them up. It's just a way to remind people, like the public safety's been doing, slowing people down and getting them to yield to
People
their
on my
neighbors.
street would laugh because there's only 6 homes on the street, so they're going to say, who am I yielding to? I can put them on my street.
Yeah, you can go on Cormier. Yeah. But one of the things we talked about at Willow was if you, let's say Linda puts it in her yard, people get blind signs. After a while, they won't see her sign at all. So maybe ask one of your neighbors, hey, would you put it in your yard? So we have it in our yard right now. We're just gonna see if we can pass it around the neighborhood just to change it up a little bit. So grab signs if you want them and put them out, and hopefully it'll get people to
put that in like Waterford Park on that, or don't they? Just because of the traffic that comes around the park.
I don't want to put anything on that corner because I want people looking at the road, not at the sign. Because that is kind of
It is a curve.
It is a curve.
Yeah, it's a big curve.
And I think a couple different ways to look at it.
Yep, no, that's fine.
Maybe approaching the curve, I would be okay with that.
Well, see.
Like that
We'll
circle.
find- I'm gonna take one. We'll
Yeah,
find
just
one.
grab
We'll
one.
find
There's
a
some
place
over
for
there.
it.
Circle and Pioneer.
Yeah, before,
That's
before you go in.
Before you're,
Yeah, so yeah,
I just think
anywhere.
about when the guys have to cut the lawn and then that thing's sitting there in the middle.
but that's the challenge.
Whatever.
Otherwise, yeah, put them in your yard or whatever.
I'll go
Keep them out of the right of way though. Put them up on the right of way. All right, then last thing I have is public comments on biking and walking the community. Anybody, anything that was not mentioned that you want to bring up?
The thing I have is the other gentleman's name Derek. What's that works with you? He sat in for you, not the last meeting. David. So I asked him that question, what this gentleman brought up, because I ride that trail. I make sure I'm not sitting on my seat when I'm
Which
right.
trail are you talking about now?
The one, the
Wabi, or the
industrial trail.
Okay.
And it is pretty rough. And I asked him the question, I said, so how do you budget for redo, for resurfacing, is it, you just have to know that you're gonna have to do something, and it becomes part of the entire budget. Because it is getting pretty
Usually
rough.
propose it and let people stew on it for a budget year or 2 or 3,
Yeah.
and then finally they're like, oh, I guess we gotta do it. I hate to see that, but sometimes that's
Yeah,
how it
there's
works.
some pretty rough
But,
spots.
but I think what we're gonna be doing this year is, I've already met with Northeast earlier in
Yeah.
the summer, late spring, and so we actually walked a good section of that trail.
Well, because of the one hole there, with the,
Well,
some cones up for.
Yeah, that's been up there forever.
Right.
So they're in no hurry to fix it because they got $5 million projects elsewhere.
Oh.
You know what I mean?
Sure.
That's what
Yep.
the issue with that. And any other smaller asphalt companies, you're looking at probably a year and a half out. So
Really?
this asphalt is a good business to be in right now.
And it's like tripled in price this
Yeah. Anyway.
Okay, no, that's what I was looking for.
And I brought it up, I'm
So-
on the park committee, so I brought it up several times on the park committee to do
so-
something like that.
A quick fix would be to try and add more crusher dust on the side and take some of that sealant, the goo, basically, and try to
Yeah,
fill
yeah,
in the
lay
holes
it
so
in
your
there.
tires don't get stuck in them, because some of it's starting to spall and break apart. But the longer term issue is because it's by the creek side, the whole trail's starting to slough. So the same thing will continue to happen even with the simple repairs. And then, for that, we've talked about having a consultant do a study, like how do we deal with this, or is this just something that needs to be done every 20 years? Because I'm thinking that trail's about 20, I'll probably put in around 2000, give or take.
No, it's earlier than that, but.
Could be. Well, let's
Yeah.
just say it's somewhere between 22 and 25 years old anyway.
Ain't done bad then.
No.
Based on what you're saying, because it's right next to the.
Yeah, you can see it's breaking off on the edge.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's breaking off in the areas closest to the water.
Yeah.
Because of the movement. So.
Any other comments, anybody, on anything that's on the agenda? Okay. Then I would welcome a motion to adjourn.
All motion to adjourn.
One second.
Motion second, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. So October 10th is the next meeting, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.